Three poor girls burst into the wedding with a cell phone and shout, "Don't marry her, you need to see this right now." The billionaire watches the video and calls 911. The Royal Gardens Hotel glistened on that perfect Saturday afternoon. The grand ballroom, decorated with white flowers and gold accents, accommodated 200 well-dressed guests. Everyone was waiting for the day's most important moment, the wedding of Elliot Mercer, the 35-year-old billionaire. Elliot was adjusting his bow tie in a small adjacent room. His fingers trembled slightly, while Alex, his best friend and best man, tried to calm him down. "Nervous?" Alex asked, straightening his own tie. "A little," Elliot admitted. "That's normal, right?" Alex smiled. "Totally normal, who wouldn't be? But everything's going to be fine." Elliot took a deep breath. After 8 months of dating, he was finally about to marry Cassandra Winters, the model who had captured his heart with a perfect smile and mesmerizing green eyes. "Mr. Mercer, it's time," announced the coordinator, popping his head through the door. Elliot made his way to the altar, where the judge was already waiting. The guests smiled as he passed by, a mix of business people, celebrities, and politicians, all eager to witness the wedding of the year. The music began. Everyone rose. Cassandra appeared at the entrance, stunning in her silk and lace gown. Her blonde hair was elegantly styled, highlighting the diamond necklace Elliot had given her. She smiled confidently as she walked down the red carpet with her bouquet of white roses. Elliot felt his heart race. In just a few minutes, Cassandra would be his wife. When she reached the altar, he took her hands in his. The judge began the ceremony by talking about love and commitment. Cassandra smiled, gently squeezing Elliot's hands at just the right moments. "If anyone knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage," said the judge, following tradition, "speak now or forever hold your peace." That was the moment the doors of the ballroom flew open with a bang. "Don't marry her! You need to see this right now!" 3 small girls ran in. The tallest one, wearing a red ribbon in her hair, couldn't have been more than 7 years old. They wore simple clothes, faded jeans and colorful t-shirts that contrasted with the lavish surroundings. The middle one, with curly hair, held an old phone with a cracked screen. A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. Cassandra turned around, her angelic face instantly morphing into a mask of fury. "Who let these kids in? Security!" she ordered, her voice losing all sweetness, but the girls were quick. They ran down the central aisle, weaving through the astonished guests who parted to let them through. "Mr. Mercer, Mr. Mercer!" yelled the girl with the red ribbon. "She just wants your money, we have proof." The security guards began to move Khan, but Elliot raised his hand. "Hold on." He knelt down to their level. There was something in their desperation that made him hesitate. "Calm down, who are you?" "I'm June," said the girl with the red ribbon. "I'm Maisie," introduced the curly-haired one, holding the phone. "And I'm Nora," added the smallest, almost hiding behind the others. Cassandra tugged on Elliot's arm. "Honey, get these kids out of here. They're ruining our wedding." Elliot noticed the panic in her eyes. "What do you want to show me?" he asked the girls. Maisie held out the phone. "It's her, look what she said." Elliot took the old phone. On the screen, a paused video awaited. He pressed play, his heart pounding with apprehension. The video showed a narrow alley between old buildings. The image was shaky, clearly filmed by inexperienced hands. In the footage, Cassandra leaned against a luxury car, talking to a man Elliot had never seen before. "The plan is simple," Cassandra said in the video. "I marry the clueless billionaire, wait 3 months, then file for divorce. With the agreement he signed, I'll get at least 300 million. The man smiled and kissed her. "He suspects nothing." Cassandra laughed, a cold laugh Elliot didn't recognize. "Elliot is rich but naive as a child. He thinks he found true love. In reality, he's found financial ruin." She returned the kiss. "Once I get the money, we'll meet in the Maldives and never come back." The ballroom fell into absolute silence. The only sound was Cassandra's voice in the video, detailing her plan. The guests exchanged shocked looks. Some lowered their eyes, embarrassed. When the video ended, Elliot stared at his bride. Cassandra's face had gone pale. "This is fakes, darling. A ridiculous montage, she tried to argue. Nora took a step forward. "There's another video," she said in a small but firm voice. Maisie tapped the screen, and another video began. This time, Cassandra stood in the same alley, speaking on the phone. "I already have his bank password," she said. "As soon as we get married, I'll transfer half into offshore accounts. He'll never notice until it's too late. Yes, the idiot trusts me completely." Cassandra tried to grab the phone. "This is absurd. Elliot, are you going to believe 3 street kids over me?" But Elliot had seen enough. With his face pale but resolved, he pulled his own phone from his pocket. "What are you doing?" Cassandra asked, her voice shaking. "Calling 911, Elliot replied. "I have video evidence of attempted fraud." The guests started murmuring. Some discreetly took pictures with their phones. Cassandra tried to run for the exit, but 2 security guards grabbed her by the arms. "Let go of me," she screamed, losing all composure. "He's got billions. Nobody needs that much money. I was just going to take what I deserved." Within minutes, 2 police officers entered the ballroom. Elliot showed them the videos, explaining the situation. After verifying the evidence, they handcuffed Cassandra. "Miss Winters, you're being detained for questioning on fraud charges," said one officer. "You have the right to remain silent." As she was led away, Cassandra shot a hateful glare at the girls. "You ruined everything, you little brats." The judge cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "I believe the ceremony is cancelled." The guests, realizing the event was over, began leaving discreetly. Elliot asked Alex to handle everything, thanking the guests, cancelling the services, explaining the situation. He sat on a bench in the front row, still trying to process what had happened. The 3 girls hovered a few steps away, unsure if they should leave. "Would you sit with me?" Elliot invited. "I want to know how you found out all this." The girls looked at each other and then timidly took a seat beside him. "How did you get these videos?" he asked. June, clearly the leader, answered, "We have a little makeshift house made of boxes in an alley near where we live. It's our secret place to play." Maisie went on, "One day we were there when that fancy car showed up. We stayed really quiet. We had borrowed Grandma's phone to take pictures," June explained, looking guilty. "Grandma doesn't even know we took it." "The pretty lady got out of the car with that man," Nora said softly. "They didn't see us in our box house. She was talking really loud," Maisie added. "And when she said your name and talked about marriage, we thought we should film it. She came back the next day," June chimed in. "We were playing again, and she arrived alone, talking on the phone." Elliot was impressed by the children's alertness. "How did you know I was getting married today? How did you find me?" "We saw it in the newspaper," June answered. "Grandma uses old newspapers to line the drawers. There was a big photo of you and her, saying you were getting married today at this hotel." "It was hard to get here," Maisie admitted. "We took 2 buses and walked a lot." "Why did you care enough to warn me?" Elliot asked curiously. "You don't even know me." The girls exchanged looks, as if silently conferring. June spoke up. "You sent food to our neighborhood. We didn't forget." Elliot tried to recall. Then he understood. 3 months earlier, a severe storm had devastated the impoverished area of Riverside. His company had sent trucks with food and blankets for the affected families. He'd simply authorized the donation when his assistant suggested it. "You live in Riverside?" he asked, surprised. Maisie nodded. "In the old part, near the closed market. We live with our grandma Della." "After the storm, our house got flooded and ruined almost everything," June explained. "Then the truck with your name on it arrived," Nora said, her eyes lighting up. "It had rice, beans, milk, even chocolate." "Grandma cried tears of joy," added Maisie. "She said it was an angel who sent it." "Grandma always says we should return the kindness we receive," June said seriously. "That's how the world becomes a better place." Elliot felt a lump in his throat. A gesture that had seemed so simple to him had meant so much to these children that they risked everything to protect him. "You 3 are amazing," he said sincerely. "You saved not just my money, but kept me from making the biggest mistake of my life." The girls smiled shyly, as if they weren't used to receiving praise. "We just wanted to help," said June. "Like you helped us." Alex returned with hot chocolate for the girls and a coffee for Elliot. The children accepted the drinks with wide-eyed pleasure. "Thank you so much," Maisie said politely. "It's delicious," Elliot observed the three of them, with their simple clothes but a dignity in their eyes that many wealthy people he had just invited would never possess. "I'd really like to meet your grandmother and thank her in person," Elliot said. "May I visit you tomorrow?" The girls seemed surprised. "You really want to come to our house?" Maisie asked in disbelief. "If you'll allow it, yes. I'd really like to." June smiled, revealing a gap where a front tooth had once been. "Grandma will be happy. She always says good people attract good things." "Then how about tomorrow afternoon?" Elliot suggested. All three agreed enthusiastically, hardly able to believe that the billionaire wanted to visit their humble home. "Can I bring anything for you?" Elliot offered. "Something you might need at home," the girls whispered among themselves before June replied. "You don't need to bring anything. We have enough." But Elliot could see that enough meant just the bare minimum to survive. Still, he admired their dignity. "It's settled then," he said, standing up. "Tomorrow I'll meet the grandmother who raised 3 such special girls." Alex offered to drive the children home in his car. Elliot stayed behind, looking around the hall that was supposed to be the setting of his wedding, but had instead become the stage for his salvation. As he watched the 3 small figures leaving hand in hand with Alex, Elliot felt something new growing within him. The wedding hadn't happened, but maybe that was for the best. The void left by Cassandra's betrayal was already being filled by something far more valuable. Gratitude for those 3 children who, wanting nothing in return, had completely changed the course of his life. Tomorrow he would visit Riverside. Tomorrow he would learn more about June, Maisie, and Nora, and the grandmother who had raised them with such strong values. Perhaps, he thought, as employees began dismantling the decorations, this was only the beginning of something new and much more meaningful in his life. Elliot's driver stopped the black car at the entrance of Riverside. The neighborhood was very different from the places the billionaire usually frequented. Small houses lined narrow streets, some with patched-up roofs. Children played ball in the road, pausing briefly to glance at the luxurious car that didn't fit the setting. "You can wait here," Elliot said to the driver. "I'm not sure how long I'll be." He got out holding a basket of fruit. He had thought about bringing expensive gifts, but something told him that would be inappropriate. June's instructions still echoed in his mind. 3rd Street on the right, pale blue house with a flower pot in the window. Rounding the corner, he saw the 3 girls sitting on the curb in front of a small house. When they spotted him, their faces lit up. They ran toward him. "You really came," Maisie exclaimed, her curls bouncing as she jumped for joy. "I told you he would," June replied with a proud smile, revealing the missing tooth. Nora, the shy one, simply smiled and took his hand. That simple gesture of trust touched Elliot more than any words could. "Grandma's waiting," June said, tugging him toward the house. "She made a special cake." The house was even smaller than it appeared from the outside. The living room, which also served as the kitchen, had worn but clean walls. An old sofa sat in one corner next to a small table with 4 mismatched chairs. In the window, a vase of colorful flowers brought life to the simple environment. A gray-haired woman with her hair in a bun stood by the stove. When Elliot entered, she wiped her hands on a floral apron and approached him with a warm smile. "Welcome to our home, Mr. Mercer. I'm Della, the grandmother of these little rascals who crashed your wedding," she said, with a blend of humor and sincerity. Her voice was firm, matching her dignified posture despite her age. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Della. And please call me Elliot," he replied, handing her the fruit basket. "I brought these for you." "How kind," she replied, accepting the gift. "Please, have a seat. The cake is almost ready." Elliot sat in one of the chairs around the small table. The girls settled around him, looking at him with curiosity. "So you're the heroines who saved my money and my heart," Elliot said, smiling at the 3. "We only did the right thing," June replied, echoing what she had said the day before. "And we're glad you didn't marry that mean lady," Nora added quietly. Della placed a simple cake on the table and poured tea into various colored cups. "I apologize for their behavior, barging into your ceremony like that. When I found out what they'd done, I almost had a heart attack." "No need to apologize," Elliot responded, tasting the cake. It's delicious. In fact, I owe them more than I can express. Cassandra would have caused me a lot of trouble. Is that what the news is talking about now? Della asked as she sat down. The police discovered she's done this before to other wealthy men, Elliot explained. But they never had solid proof. Thanks to your granddaughters, she won't fool anyone else. As they talked, Elliot discreetly observed the house. There was no television, just an old radio. A small hallway likely led to the bedrooms. Despite its simplicity, everything was neat and organized. What do you do during the day? Elliot asked the girls. Are you on a school break? The three exchanged glances, seeming suddenly uncomfortable. Della was the one who spoke up. They don't go to school, Mr. Mercer? Elliot, she corrected herself, lowering her eyes for the first time. The neighborhood school closed down 2 years ago. The nearest one is 3 miles away, and there's no transportation. Plus, she continued more quietly, we need documents we don't have. The girls' birth certificates were lost in the flood that destroyed their parents' home. Elliot felt a pang in his chest. You've never been to school, not even once. June shook her head. Grandma teaches us a little reading, and we can count up to 100. I can write my name, Maisie said proudly. Wanna see? Without waiting for an answer, she ran to a drawer and came back with a piece of paper where Maisie was written in large, uneven letters. That's really good, Elliot praised, feeling something inside him break. These bright, courageous kids who had risked everything for him didn't even have access to basic education. I do what I can, Della said quietly. But I didn't study much. There are things I can't teach them. Elliot looked around again. On the wall hung a child's drawing of a school with children playing in the yard. The son in the picture had a smiling face. Who drew that? He asked. I did, Nora replied shyly. It's how I think a school looks. June told me about it. And how do you know what a school looks like, June? Elliot asked. I saw a book we found on the street, she explained. It had pretty pictures. Something changed inside Elliot at that moment. A determination he hadn't felt in a long time took hold of him. He got up from the chair, surprising them all. Ladies, he said solemnly, looking at all 4 of them, I'd like to make a promise to you. The girls watched him curiously. Della looked apprehensive. I'm going to build a school, right here, in Riverside. And you, he pointed to the 3 girls, are going to study. You'll learn anything you want to learn. The girls' eyes widened. Della covered her mouth with her hand. Are you serious? June asked, her voice trembling a bit. I've never been more serious in my life, Elliot replied. It's the least I can do for you. A school not just for you 3, but for all the children in this neighborhood. A real school, with a chalkboard and books, Maisie asked, almost breathless with excitement. With everything a school needs, Elliot confirmed. Nora, usually so quiet, stood up and hugged Elliot's leg tightly. Thank you, she whispered. Della's eyes were filled with tears. Mr. Mercer, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, Elliot responded, feeling strangely emotional. Just help me make this happen. I'll need you to tell me everything about the neighborhood, about the other kids, about what you need. As he left the small blue house that afternoon, Elliot Mercer was a different man than the one who had walked in. The billionaire who had almost married the wrong woman now had a new purpose. Looking at the modest neighborhood with new eyes, he could already see the spot where the school would be built, envisioning the lives it would transform. In the car on the way back to his mansion, he made several calls to his team of lawyers, to architects, to the city's education department. His mind worked quickly, planning every detail. A sincere commitment had been made, and with it, new destinies began to unfold. News of the school construction in Riverside spread fast. In 1 week, the land was purchased. In 2, the designs were ready. Elliot insisted on being involved in every detail, from choosing the site to picking the paint colors. I want a school kids love to attend, he explained to the architects, not just a functional building. Riverside residents watched curiously as engineers and machinery moved into the empty lot near the neighborhood center. Some doubted a wealthy man really cared that much. Others, hopeful, spent hours observing the work's progress. While the school took shape, Elliot established a routine that surprised even his personal assistant. 3 times a week, he left his office early and drove to Della's small blue house. On his first return visit after making his promise, he brought baskets of food. "You don't have to bring groceries every time," Della said when he arrived with his arms full. "It's not an obligation, it's a pleasure," Elliot answered, setting the bags on the table. "And please, no more mister. It makes me feel old." June helped unpack the items, her eyes lighting up at the sight of chocolate and fruit she rarely tasted. Maisie tried to read the labels on the products, slowly sounding out the difficult words. Nora just watched, smiling shyly whenever Elliot glanced her way. "I brought something special for you," he said, taking a small package from his pocket. It was a set of colored pencils and notebooks for each of them. "Until the school is ready, we can start with some basic lessons," he explained. "If that's okay with you, Della." "That would be wonderful," she replied, her eyes conveying a gratitude words couldn't express. That afternoon, the tiny kitchen table turned into an improvised classroom. Elliot showed the girls how to properly hold pencils, how to trace letters on lined pages. To his surprise, he discovered that teaching was more rewarding than any business deal he had ever closed. "Look, I wrote my name," Maisie exclaimed, proudly displaying her notebook where Maisie appeared in more uniform letters than before. "That's perfect," Elliot praised. "Tomorrow we'll learn how to write last names." "We don't have a last name," June said, frowning. "Or do we, Grandma?" Della sighed. "Your last name is Carter, the same as your mother, my daughter. She passed away when you were all very young. Your father, well, he left before Nora was even born." Elliot noticed the discomfort on the older woman's face. "Carter is a great last name," he said quickly. "Tomorrow we'll practice June Carter, Maisie Carter, Nora Carter." In the visits that followed, a comfortable routine was established. Elliot always brought something, sometimes food, sometimes school supplies, occasionally a simple toy he knew would mean the world to the girls. But more important than the gifts was his constant presence. On a rainy afternoon, he arrived with 3 colorful umbrellas, one for each girl. "So you can walk to school without getting wet once it's ready," he explained. Nora, who rarely spoke, hugged her purple umbrella. "I've never had something that was just mine before," she whispered so softly only Elliot could hear. On another visit, he brought new clothes. They weren't expensive or flashy items, but durable jeans, bright t-shirts, and warm jackets for the approaching winter. "Try them on," June encouraged when Maisie hesitated to open her package. "I'm sure they'll fit." The girls disappeared into the small bedroom they shared and emerged minutes later, proud in their new outfits. Elliot snapped a photo with his phone, the first of many that would fill his gallery in the months to come. "You look beautiful," he said sincerely. "Real little princesses." "I don't want to be a princess," June declared, hands on her hips. "I want to be a scientist and discover things." Elliot laughed. "Then you'll be the world's first princess scientist." As the weeks passed, the girls' confidence grew. Nora, once so shy, now ran to the door whenever she heard Elliot's car. Maisie saved special drawings to show him. June, always the leader, planned activities for Uncle Elliot's visits. "Uncle Elliot," he repeated the first time he heard it, feeling a warm sensation in his chest. "I like how that sounds." The impromptu lessons continued. Elliot discovered that each girl had different talents. June soaked up information like a sponge and asked questions that sometimes left him momentarily stumped. Maisie had a gift for numbers, counting and adding with surprising ease. Nora, though quieter, revealed herself to be a natural artist, creating drawings that told complete stories. 1 month after his first visit, Elliot arrived with a small bookshelf and a box of children's books. "Every home needs a library," he declared as he helped Della set the shelf in the living room. That night, he stayed later than usual, reading stories to the girls. Seated on the worn rug, they listened intently to every word, every inflection when he voiced different characters. "One more, please," Maisie begged when he closed the 3rd book. "It's getting late," Della said kindly. "Mr. Elliot needs to go home." "Just one more short story." Elliot relented, unable to resist their hopeful looks. "Then I really must go." When he finally said goodbye, he realized he didn't want to leave. The small blue house, with its modest furniture and worn walls, had become more welcoming than his empty mansion. Elliot's visits didn't go unnoticed by the neighbors. Soon, other children in the area started to appear when his car arrived. He never came empty-handed, always bringing fruit or cookies to share. "You're feeding half the neighborhood," Della commented one afternoon, watching the kids play in the small backyard. "Just warming up for when the school is running," he replied with a smile. "By the way, the construction is ahead of schedule. We should open in about 3 months." "The girls talk about nothing else," Della said, her tired eyes shining with emotion. "You have no idea what this means to them, to all of us." During one of his visits, Elliot brought a special surprise: 3 simple but pretty dresses, one for each girl. "For the school's grand opening," he explained when they opened the packages in curiosity. "You'll be my guests of honor." "Are we going to cut the ribbon?" Maisie asked, twirling in her light green dress. "Absolutely," Elliot confirmed. "You're the reason all this exists." The school's construction progressed quickly. Walls went up, windows were installed, and a small playground took shape out back. Elliot frequently brought the girls along to see the progress, explaining every phase of the build. "That's going to be your classroom," he pointed out to Nora, who held his hand confidently. "And that bigger space will be the library." "Will it have lots of books?" she asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "More books than you can read in a whole year," Elliot promised. "Challenge accepted," June declared with determination, making everyone laugh. Elliot's visits weren't just about gifts or supervising the school construction. Often he simply showed up to share a simple dinner Della had prepared or to watch the sunset from the small porch, with Nora quietly leaning on his shoulder. On one particularly beautiful Sunday, he suggested a picnic. "I know a park not too far from here. We can spend the afternoon there." The girls were thrilled by the idea. Della, however, looked hesitant. "I'm not sure, Elliot. The girls have never really left the neighborhood except that day of your almost wedding." "That's exactly why," he insisted. "They need to see other places, and I promise I'll take care of them as if they were—" He paused, suddenly aware of what he was about to say. "As if we were what?" June asked, curious. "As if you were very important to me," he finished. "Because you are." The picnic was an absolute success. The girls ran around the park, fed ducks by the lake, and played on the swings until they were dizzy from laughing. Della relaxed on a blanket spread on the grass, watching them with a serene smile. "I've never seen them so happy," she commented when Elliot sat down beside her, observing the 3 sisters trying to catch a butterfly. "They deserve every moment of happiness," Elliot replied, "and so much more." That afternoon marked a subtle shift in their relationship. They were no longer just benefactor and recipients. There was something deeper growing, something none of them could name yet. In the following weeks, Elliot started bringing his work to Della's house. He'd sit at the small kitchen table with his laptop, reviewing contracts and answering important emails while the girls did the homework he assigned. "Aren't we bothering you?" Della asked one evening, placing a cup of tea beside him. "On the contrary," Elliot replied without taking his eyes off the screen. "I've never been so productive. There's something here that helps me focus." The simple house had become his refuge. Here he wasn't billionaire Elliot Mercer, head of companies and target for gold diggers like Cassandra. He was just Elliot, the friend who brought chocolate and read bedtime stories. 2 months after his first visit on a typical Sunday, Della prepared a special lunch. The small table could barely hold the elaborate meal she had spent the morning cooking. "Is there a special occasion?" Elliot asked, seeing all the effort. "Life is the special occasion," the older woman replied with a mysterious smile. The girls helped set the table, proud to use the new plates and silverware Elliot had brought over the previous week. There was a different atmosphere in the air, a sense of anticipation he couldn't quite place. They sat down to eat, and as always, Della asked everyone to join hands for a brief prayer of thanks. It was a ritual Elliot had grown to appreciate, even if he wasn't particularly religious. "Thank you for the food on our table," Della said softly, "and for the new family we are building." Elliot opened his eyes, surprised at her words. Della smiled at him, a smile full of warmth and acceptance. The meal continued with the usual excitement. The girls talked about what they were learning at the new makeshift lessons, about plans for when the school was finished. Elliot listened intently, adding details about the progress of the construction. "The uniforms arrive next week," he said between bites. "Light blue, just like we agreed. We'll be the prettiest girls at school," Maisie declared confidently. "And the smartest," June added. "And you'll draw the prettiest trees," Elliot said, winking at Nora, who smiled shyly. They were having dessert, a simple pudding Della had prepared when it happened. June, unusually quiet for a few minutes, set down her spoon and looked directly at Elliot. "Uncle Elliot," she began, her small voice firm. "We have something we want to say." Elliot felt his heart speed up, not sure why. "What is it, June?" The girl glanced at her sisters, who nodded silently in encouragement. Then she turned back to Elliot, a smile lighting up her face. "You're part of our family now." 5 simple words, spoken by a 7-year-old, but for Elliot, it was as if the entire world had stopped. He felt something warm and liquid forming in his eyes, something he hadn't experienced in years. "Really?" he managed to ask, his voice cracking. All 3 girls nodded seriously, as if conveying an important decision made after careful thought. "We already decided," Maisie confirmed. "Grandma thinks so too." Elliot looked at Della, who just smiled and nodded gently, her calm eyes confirming without words what the girls were declaring. He couldn't reply immediately. Images of his life before meeting these 4 people flashed through his mind. The empty mansion, the endless meetings, the superficial relationships, the near wedding with Cassandra. And then, as if someone hit a fast-forward button, the last 2 months, makeshift lessons at the kitchen table, stories read before bedtime, proud drawings, Nora's trusting little hand in his. "Are you sure you want me in your family?" he finally asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm a very busy person, sometimes grumpy in the morning, and I barely know how to cook." "We don't mind," June replied with the simple wisdom of a child. "Family is who we choose, right, Grandma?" "Yes, dear," Della confirmed gently. "Family is who we choose to love and who loves us back." Nora, who rarely spoke, placed her small hand on Elliot's across the table. "Stay with us," she asked simply. In that moment, everything became clear to Elliot. The emptiness he had carried for years, even with all his money and success, finally had a name. It was the lack of belonging. And there, in that small kitchen, with a simple pudding in front of him and 4 pairs of hopeful eyes upon him, Elliot Mercer, at last, belonged somewhere. "I'd be honored to be part of this family," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion. The girls' faces lit up. Maisie clapped her hands in excitement. Nora gave one of her rare, full smiles. June, ever practical, declared, "Then it's settled. Now you have to come to all our Sunday lunches." Elliot laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. "It's a promise," he said, raising his glass of juice in a toast. When lunch ended and they moved to the small living room, with the girls showing Elliot their latest drawings, he realized there was no other place in the world he'd rather be. The school being built, his business, his mansion, everything else felt secondary compared to the feeling that little house gave him. Della sat beside him on the worn sofa, watching the 3 sisters playing on the rug. "They're very perceptive," she said quietly, so only Elliot could hear. "They notice things even we adults sometimes miss." "Like what?" Elliot asked, curious. "Like the fact that you need them just as much as they need you." The simplicity and truth of her words left him momentarily speechless. He simply nodded, realizing deep down she was right. Later that afternoon, when he finally had to leave, the goodbyes were different. It wasn't "see you later" or "I'll be back soon." It was simply "see you tomorrow," with the certainty of someone who knows they're only briefly leaving the place they belong. Driving back to his mansion, Elliot realized that for the first time in a very long time, he was truly happy. Not because of a professional achievement or material gain, but because of something simpler and deeper. He had been chosen by 3 little girls and their wise grandmother, who saw in him not the billionaire, but the man. A bond had been formed, without official papers or elaborate ceremonies, just sincere words spoken over a Sunday lunch. The months went by quickly, marked by Elliot's frequent visits to the small blue house and the construction site of the school. Summer turned to fall, which yielded to winter, and then spring came. With the changing seasons, the Riverside School rose, brick by brick, window by window. Elliot supervised every stage personally. He arrived early at the site, talking to workers, checking materials. Often he brought the girls to see the progress. "This'll be your classroom," he'd point out to June, who memorized every detail to report back to her grandmother. "And here we'll have the library," he'd tell Maisie, who was already dreaming of all the books she could read. "This space will be for art classes," he'd say to Nora, whose eyes shone at the possibilities. 1 month before completion, Elliot arrived at Della's house wearing a different smile. "I have a special request for you all," he announced during dinner. "What is it?" June asked, always the first to respond. "We need to decide on the school's name, and I want you three to choose it." The girls exchanged surprised looks. "We can pick any name," Maisie asked in disbelief. "Any appropriate name," Elliot laughed. "Maybe not Chocolate School or something like that." "We could call it Mercer School," June suggested. "After all, you're the one building it." Elliot shook his head. "This school isn't about me. It's about you, about the future, about opportunities." The girls spent days thinking it over. They made lists, discussed ideas at meal times, scribbled names in their notebooks. Finally, on a Saturday afternoon, they announced their decision. "We've chosen a name," said June solemnly. "I'm excited to hear it," Elliot replied, seated in the small living room. "We want to call it New Beginning School," June declared, "because that's what it means." "A new beginning for everyone," Maisie added. Nora simply nodded, her shy smile indicating approval. Elliot felt his chest tighten with emotion. In all his business ventures, he had never heard such a perfect name for a project. "It's perfect," he said simply. "New Beginning School it is." The following week, the sign was placed at the entrance of the nearly finished building. "New Beginnings Community School, Riverside." Below that, in smaller letters, "Where everyone gets a chance." As the opening day approached, the girls' excitement grew. They counted the days, marking each one on a calendar Elliot had brought them. "Only 15 days left," June announced one morning. "Then 14, then 13, Maisie counted on her fingers. A week before the big day, Elliot arrived with 3 colorful boxes, one for each girl. "Early presents," he said, placing them on the kitchen table. June opened the red box, Maisie the green one, and Nora the purple, each in her favorite color. Inside there was a new backpack, a pencil case filled with pencils, pens and erasers, and 5 brightly colored notebooks. "Are these ours?" Maisie asked, running her hand over the smooth cover of a notebook as if it were precious. "All yours," Elliot confirmed. "Each notebook is for a different subject: math, science, languages, history, and one for free drawing." Nora hugged her purple backpack to her chest, her eyes shining with emotion. June tried hers on, checking how it looked. Maisie meticulously organized her materials in the pencil case. Della watched from the kitchen doorway, silent tears streaming down her face. "I never thought I'd live to see this," she said softly when Elliot approached her. "My girls with their own school supplies, about to attend a real school." "They deserve this and so much more," Elliot replied, gently placing his hand on her shoulder. On the eve of the opening, excitement swept through the entire neighborhood. The school was finally finished, and a community party had been organized to celebrate. Tables were set up in the courtyard with food and drinks for all the residents. A small stage was built for official speeches. Elliot made sure to bring the girls early for a private tour before the crowd arrived. "I want you to see everything without the rush," he explained. The building wasn't huge or luxurious, but it had been built with attention to detail. 2 floors, 10 bright and spacious classrooms, a cozy library, a basic science lab, an art room, and a cafeteria that would also serve as an auditorium. The courtyard had trees planted strategically to provide shade on hot days, colorful benches, and a small playground with swings and a slide. "It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen," Maisie said, spinning in the middle of an empty classroom, admiring the new desks and the gleaming blackboard. "Come see the library," June called from the next doorway. The shelves weren't yet completely full, but hundreds of books already lined them, various categories, for all ages. "You can borrow as many as you like," Elliot explained. "Just sign them out on the card." Nora, generally so quiet, was the most excited about the art room. She touched the new paintbrushes, the pots of colorful paint, and the stacks of different-sized paper. "Do you like it?" Elliot asked softly. She nodded, unable to express in words how she felt. The opening celebration was a success. The mayor came to cut the ribbon, praising the private initiative that benefited the whole community. Newly hired teachers introduced themselves, explaining their methods and plans. Local parents and children explored the space, full of admiration. But the most special moment was when Elliot took the small stage, inviting the 3 girls to stand beside him. "This school exists because of these 3, he said into the microphone, one hand on June's shoulder. "They taught me about gratitude and selfless kindness. They showed me we can give back in ways that change lives." The girls, wearing the simple dresses Elliot had bought months earlier, smiled shyly at the crowd. "Tomorrow, New Beginning School opens its doors to 150 students. We hope to double that number next year. No one will be turned away for lack of documents or resources. This is a place for everyone." The crowd erupted in applause. Della, in the front row, dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. "And to symbolize this new beginning, I'm asking my 3 special friends to cut the ribbon with us." The mayor offered the big scissors to June, who held them together with Maisie and Nora. Together, they cut the red ribbon stretched across the main entrance of the school. "It's officially open," Elliot declared, to another round of applause. That night, in the small blue house, excitement was so high that Della struggled to convince the girls to go to bed. "If you don't rest, you won't have the energy for your first day of class tomorrow," she reasoned. "But what if we can't sleep because we're too excited?" Maisie asked, bouncing on her bed. "Try counting sheep," Elliot, who had stayed for dinner, suggested. "Or better yet, count the books in the library." "There are way too many," June laughed. After finally tucking them in, Elliot and Della sat on the small porch. The night was pleasant, with a gentle breeze and a starry sky. "You've changed their lives forever," Della said after a long silence. "There aren't enough words to thank you." "They changed mine first," Elliot replied sincerely. "Who knows where I'd be now if they hadn't crashed my wedding that day?" "Probably broken with a broken heart," Della teased, making him laugh. "Probably," he agreed. "Are you coming tomorrow for their first day?" Elliot hesitated. "I think I should skip it. I want them to live this moment without my presence making it a big event. I want them to just be 3 students among other children." Della nodded in understanding. "That makes sense. They need to find their own way now." "But I'll be watching from a distance," Elliot assured her. "I wouldn't miss it for anything." The next morning, the sun rose brightly over Riverside. In the small blue house, the day began early. Della prepared a special breakfast, scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, and warm rolls that Elliot had arranged to be delivered. "You'll need your energy for the big day," she told the girls as she served them. June ate quickly, eager to get dressed. Maisie picked at her food, too anxious to have much appetite. Nora chewed slowly, observing her sisters, her eyes showing a mix of fear and anticipation. After breakfast, it was time to get ready. The uniforms hung on the wardrobe door: navy blue skirts, white shirts, white socks, and black shoes. Simple, but neat. "I want my hair up with the red ribbon," June requested. "I want braids," said Maisie. Della did her best, her aged but skilled hands working on the girl's hair. For Nora, she did a simple style, just pinning the front strands back with a purple clip. "You look beautiful," Della said, moved to see them so ready. Like real students. The girls picked up their backpacks, triple-checking they had everything. June had organized it all the night before. Maisie rummaged through hers every 5 minutes to make sure she hadn't forgotten anything. Nora just held hers tightly, as if afraid it would vanish. "Ready?" Della asked, grabbing her purse. "What if we can't learn?" Maisie suddenly blurted, voicing her biggest fear. "Of course you can," Della reassured her. "You're the smartest kids I know." "What if the other kids don't like us?" Nora asked in a small voice. "They'll love you," Della replied. "How could they not? And what if—" June began, but stopped, biting her lip. "What is it, dear?" Della encouraged her. "What if we disappoint Uncle Elliot after all he's done for us?" The question caught Della by surprise. She knelt down, despite her achy joints, to be at their eye level. "Listen," she said firmly, "you could never disappoint Elliot. He did all this because he believes in you, because he sees your potential. All you need to do is try your best. The rest will come." The three nodded, somewhat reassured. "Now let's go, or we'll be late on your very first day." The walk to the school had never seemed so long, though it was only 5 blocks. Other neighborhood kids walked in the same direction, some with parents, some in small groups. "Look how many children," Maisie whispered, squeezing Della's hand. "They're all going to our school," June said, emphasizing "our" with pride. As they approached, the new building came into view. The sign "New Beginnings Community School" shone under the morning sun. At the main gate, teachers welcomed students with warm smiles. "Good morning, what's your name?" a young teacher asked June as they arrived. "June Carter," she replied, her voice firm despite her nerves. "Class 2B, room 8, the teacher said, after consulting her list. "And you?" "Maisie Carter." "Also 2B. Great, you'll be together." "And who's the little one?" "Nora Carter," Della answered as Nora hid behind her. "1A, room 3, the teacher smiled. "Don't worry, sweetie. Your teacher, Mrs. Bennett, is wonderful with shy kids." Della hugged each granddaughter, adjusting their hair one last time and kissing their foreheads. "You're going to have a wonderful day," she promised. "I'll be here when you get out to hear all about it." June and Maisie headed off together to their classroom, hand in hand. Nora hesitated, clinging to her grandmother's dress. "Do you want me to walk you to your room?" Della offered. Nora thought for a moment, then shook her head. "I can go by myself," she said in a quiet but determined voice. "Are you sure?" The girl nodded. After one last hug, she headed off, her small purple backpack bouncing on her back as she walked slowly down the hall. Della stood at the gate for a few minutes, watching until the last of her granddaughters disappeared into the building. Tears welled in her eyes, but her heart was full of gratitude and hope. What she didn't notice was the black car parked discreetly across the street. Inside it, Elliot watched through a telephoto lens, capturing every moment. The girls arriving in their uniforms with backpacks, Della fixing their hair, the goodbyes, and finally Nora bravely walking alone down the corridor. When the last child had gone in and the gates were closed, Elliot lowered the camera. His face was wet with silent tears, but they were tears of pure joy. He remembered the day at the altar when 3 little girls had stormed his wedding. At the time, he thought they'd saved his money and heart from a con artist. Only now did he fully understand. They'd saved his soul, giving his life a true purpose. The school was just the beginning. The real gift had been those 3 children entering his life and transforming it completely. "Thank you," he whispered to no one in particular, starting the car and driving away slowly. New Beginning School faded behind him, its windows gleaming in the sun, filled with children's voices and infinite possibilities. The week after the school's inauguration brought a new routine to the small blue house. Mornings started even earlier, with Della making breakfast while the girls got ready. Afternoons were filled with animated stories about what they had learned, the friends they were making and their daily discoveries. Elliot visited often, but tried to give them space to adjust to their new life. He listened intently to every report, answered questions about difficult subjects, and celebrated small achievements as if they were major victories. One Friday, he arrived after dinner carrying a small bag. It wasn't unusual for him to bring gifts, but there was something different this time, a certain formality in his eyes, a quiet expectancy. "May I steal the girls for a few minutes?" he asked Della, who was washing dishes. "Of course," she answered knowingly. "You can go to the porch." "It's a lovely evening." The 3 followed Elliot outside, curious. The small back porch of the house had just one worn bench and 2 wooden chairs. June and Maisie took the bench while Nora settled on the doorstep. Elliot pulled over one chair to face them. "I have something for you," he began, his tone more serious than usual. "Is it a present?" Maisie asked, her eyes shining with anticipation. "Yes, but not a typical present," Elliot explained. It's something special. He opened the bag and took out 3 identical velvet boxes in dark blue. He handed one to each girl, watching their faces as they received the tiny parcels. June opened hers first, always the bravest. Her eyes widened at what she saw. "It's beautiful," she whispered, carefully taking out a delicate silver necklace. A small star-shaped pendant dangled from it. Maisie and Nora opened their boxes too, finding identical necklaces. The soft glow of the street lamp made the pendants shine like little constellations. "They're stars," Nora said quietly, touching the pendant with her fingertips. "Why stars?" asked June, always wanting to understand. Elliot smiled and leaned forward slightly in his chair. "When I was little, my grandmother told me stars in the sky are special because even when we can't see them during the day, they're still there," he began. "Even when clouds hide them, they keep shining." The girls listened closely, still holding the necklaces. She said special people are like stars. They keep shining even when life gets tough, even when problems seem to block everything else. Elliot paused, feeling emotion rise in his throat. He took a deep breath before continuing. "You 3 are the brightest stars I've ever known. When everything was dark in my life, when I was about to make a terrible mistake marrying Cassandra, you shone for me. You showed me the right path." June looked at the pendant in her hand, running her finger over its smooth, shiny surface. "These aren't just necklaces," Elliot continued. "They're a reminder, so you'll always remember how special you are and how you light up the lives of everyone around you." He took Nora's necklace from her small hand and gently clasped it around her neck. "For Nora, who shines quietly but with as much strength as any star in the sky." He did the same for Maisie. "For Maisie, whose light is full of joy and curiosity, illuminating every dark corner." Finally, he clasped June's necklace. "And for June, the guiding star, who always shows the way for the others." When he finished, he smiled at all 3, his heart full. "These necklaces are for 3 special girls with the kindest hearts I know." The simple words hung in the evening air, laden with meaning. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then, as if responding to a silent cue, all 3 stood up at the same time and hugged Elliot. Nora clung to his leg. Maisie wrapped her arms around his waist, and June, the tallest, managed to reach his neck. Their triple hug almost knocked Elliot off the chair, but he didn't mind. He embraced all 3, feeling the purity of that moment. They didn't say anything, they didn't need to. The silence carried more meaning than any words could. Della stood by the door, watching without wanting to interrupt. Her eyes met Elliot's over the girls' heads, and she nodded gently, as if recognizing and approving what she saw. The moment stretched on, no one wanting to be the first to let go. Finally, Nora stepped back, touching the star pendant now resting on her chest. "I'm going to wear it every day," she promised solemnly. "Me too," Maisie agreed. "And when we feel sad, we'll look at it and remember," June added. Elliot felt tears welling up. He didn't try to hide them. He let them flow, clear as the love he felt for these 3 children who had transformed his life. They weren't tears of sadness, but of fulfillment, of recognition, of a feeling so pure and genuine that it needed no name or definition. While the girls admired their necklaces, comparing how they looked on each other, Elliot reflected on how the most valuable gifts he'd ever given were 3 simple silver necklaces. And the most valuable gifts he'd ever received were things money could never buy. That night, when he finally had to leave, the goodbyes were different. Each girl touched her star before saying goodbye, as if the gesture connected them even across distance. Driving back home, Elliot thought about how something as small as a star-shaped pendant could mean so much, not because of its material value, but for the sentiment it represented. A sentiment without demands, without expectations. Love in its purest form. Elliot couldn't focus on work that day. He tried to review contracts, join video conferences, and answer urgent emails. But his mind was miles away, at New Beginnings School, where 3 special girls were living their first day as real students. Around noon, he gave up completely. "Cancel my afternoon appointments," he told his assistant. Something important came up. He drove to Riverside earlier than usual. He knew classes would be out at 3:30 p.m., but he wanted to be there beforehand to see the girls' faces the exact moment they walked out the school gates for the first time. He parked in the same discreet spot as that morning, where he could watch without being noticed right away. He didn't want to take away from Della's moment, as she would surely be waiting for her granddaughters. As the clock approached dismissal time, parents and guardians started gathering outside the gate. Della was among them, wearing her best dress, the blue one with small white flowers she saved for special occasions. Finally, the bell rang. The gates opened and kids began to spill out, some running, others strolling casually, some alone, others in newly formed groups. Elliot scanned the crowd until he saw them. First June, then Maisie, and finally Nora, walking together, backpacks on their shoulders and huge smiles they couldn't contain. They ran to Della, embracing her all at once. Even from a distance, Elliot could see their excitement in every gesture, the way they all tried to talk at once, how their little bodies practically vibrated with enthusiasm. Della listened intently, responding with smiles and questions he couldn't hear. He waited patiently until they started walking home. Only then did he start his car and followed slowly, keeping his distance. When they reached the small blue house and went inside, Elliot waited 10 more minutes before approaching. He wanted to give them time to settle and start processing the day. When he finally knocked on the door, he heard hurried footsteps inside. The door swung open and there they were, still in their uniforms, excitement radiating from their faces. "Uncle Elliot," they shouted in unison, as if rehearsed. "Hello, my stars," he replied, using the nickname he'd adopted after gifting them the necklaces. "How was your big day?" They all began talking at once, pulling him inside, each one desperate to tell her story first. One at a time, Della called from the kitchen, where she was preparing a snack. "Let him come in properly." Elliot entered and closed the door behind him. The girls practically dragged him to the living room, where 3 open backpacks displayed notebooks, books, and worksheets. "You first, June," Elliot said, sitting on the couch with Nora climbing onto his lap immediately. June, always the leader, carefully picked up her notebook as though it were a fragile treasure. She opened to the first page, revealing rows of written J.I., some crooked, some more aligned. "Our teacher introduced all the letters of the alphabet today, but we practiced the first letter of our names," she explained proudly. "Look, this last J is almost perfect." Elliot examined it closely, admiring every detail. "It's wonderful, June. Before long, you'll be writing entire stories." "The teacher said my handwriting's getting better," June went on, closing the notebook carefully. "And soon I'll learn to write my full name." "What about you, Maisie?" Elliot asked, turning to the middle child. Maisie hopped from one foot to the other, unable to contain her energy. "We learned to count." "Wanna see?" Without waiting, she started. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. She continued, focused, sometimes pausing briefly to recall the next number, but didn't make a mistake. 18, 19, 20, she finished triumphantly. "The teacher said tomorrow we'll go up to 30. "That's impressive," Elliot praised sincerely. "You have a natural talent for math." "What's math?" Maisie asked, curious. "It's the study of numbers," Elliot explained. "How they work, how we use them to solve problems, understand the world." Maisie's eyes sparkled. "Then I'm going to be a math person when I grow up." Elliot smiled. "You can be whatever you want." Nora, still perched on his lap, lightly tugged on his sleeve, wanting attention too. "And you, little one, how was your day?" he asked gently. Instead of speaking, Nora slid off his lap and went to her backpack. She pulled out a sheet of paper and brought it back, handing it over timidly. On the paper, a big yellow sun with a smile took up almost all the space. Orange rays spread in every direction, and below it, a small figure, presumably representing Nora, was gazing upward. "Did you draw this?" Elliot asked, impressed. Nora nodded. "On the board first," she said softly. "The teacher liked it so much she asked me to draw it on paper after." "It's the prettiest sun I've ever seen," Elliot declared, making the little girl's eyes shine with pride. "Did you know the sun is a star?" June chimed in, always ready to share knowledge. "The teacher told us today. Is that right?" Elliot pretended to be surprised, though he already knew. Yes, it's the closest star to Earth, June continued. That's why it looks bigger than the others. So Nora drew a giant star, Maisie concluded, looking again at the drawing. The biggest star of all, Elliot confirmed, making Nora smile shyly. Della came into the living room carrying a tray of sandwiches, cut into triangles and cups of juice. Figured you'd be hungry after all that learning, she said, placing the tray on the small coffee table. The girls dove into the snacks with enthusiasm, hardly pausing to breathe as they kept talking. Between bites, they spoke about the friends they made, the books they saw in the library, the cafeteria where they ate lunch, the playground where they played during recess. They have a swing just like we drew, Maisie said, referring to the drawings they made months ago when Elliot asked what they'd like in a school. And a big tree where we can sit underneath, June added, and a whole room just for art, Nora chimed in, clearly her favorite part. Elliot listened to everything, asking occasional questions, mostly just soaking in the pure joy that radiated from the three of them. In his long career, he had enjoyed many triumphant moments, successful deals, major acquisitions, record profits, but none compared to this, witnessing the genuine happiness of three children whose lives had been changed by something he helped create. When they finished their snacks and their stories started repeating from sheer excitement, June looked directly at Elliot, suddenly serious. "Do you know something, Uncle Elliot?" "What, June?" "It was the best day of our lives." Maisie and Nora nodded vigorously in agreement. Elliot felt that familiar warmth tighten his chest, an emotion so powerful it almost hurt. His eyes grew misty, and he didn't bother hiding it. "It might be my best day too," he replied sincerely. The three smiled, then launched themselves at him in a group hug that made him fall back on the sofa, laughing. They laughed too, and for a few perfect moments, the little living room was filled only with the sound of pure happiness. Later, once the girls finally went to change out of their uniforms into more comfortable clothes, Della invited Elliot to have coffee in the small backyard. The yard was just a patch of grass with a few potted plants and a wooden bench propped against the house wall. But on that mild spring evening, with the sun setting, it felt as welcoming as any grand garden. "They seem happy," Della commented, pouring coffee into chipped but clean mugs. "They're glowing," Elliot agreed. "And that's partly thanks to you too, Della, for raising them with so much love and teaching them important values." The older woman smiled, her tired eyes drifting toward the low wall that separated the yard from the street. "I do my best," she said simply. "It's not always easy." Elliot sensed she had more to say. He waited patiently, sipping the strong coffee. "You know," she began after a long silence, "I never planned on raising 3 small children at my age. This isn't how I pictured my final years." "What happened?" Elliot asked gently, realizing it was the first time Della had opened up about their past. She took a deep breath, staring into the mug cradled in her wrinkled hands. "My daughter, Elaine, was too young when she got pregnant with June, only 17. The father was a local boy who ran off as soon as he found out. But Elaine was strong. She decided to have the baby and keep studying. I supported her, of course. June was born Mars, and for a while we managed." Elliot listened carefully, respecting the careful, unhurried way Della told her story. "When June was a bit over a year old, Elaine met another young man. It seemed good at first. He treated June like his own daughter. They moved into a tiny apartment, wanting to build a life together." Della sighed. "Then Maisie came along." She took a sip of coffee before continuing. "Things got hard. He started drinking, losing jobs. Elaine worked 2 places just to pay the bills. When Maisie was about 8 months old, he disappeared for weeks, then came back suddenly, full of apologies, swearing he'd changed." Della shook her head. Elaine believed him. She always saw the best in people. Elliot could guess where the story was heading and felt a pang in his heart. Soon Elaine was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was tough from the start. High blood pressure, swelling. The doctors advised bed rest, but how could she do that with 2 little girls and bills to pay? Della paused. "In the 8th month, he vanished again, packed his things and left without a word." "What a coward," Elliot muttered, feeling unexpected anger. Della nodded. The stress was too much. Elaine went into premature labor. Nora was born tiny, fighting for her life. And Elaine, her voice caught, Elaine hemorrhaged. They couldn't stop it in time. Elliot closed his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of her loss even after so many years. Their mother died in childbirth. Their father was gone. I've raised all three ever since, Della summarized, her voice now steady despite the pain. Suddenly, at 60, I was mother to 3 children, a newborn fighting to survive, one a little over a year old, and one almost 3, all confused and scared, not understanding why their mom didn't come home. You're an extraordinary woman, Della, Elliot said sincerely. She smiled slightly. I did what any grandmother would. I picked up the pieces and kept going. For them. They sat in silence for a few moments, the only sounds from birds settling in the nearby trees and the occasional laughter of the girls inside. You know what was hardest, Della continued. Not the sleepless nights or working late to put food on the table. It was seeing in their eyes, especially June, who remembered her mother, that constant searching, that unspoken question. When will someone stay? When will we have someone who won't leave? Elliot felt a lump in his throat. They've always wanted someone who would stay, Della said gently. Someone besides this old grandma who won't be here forever. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the small yard. From inside the house came the girls singing, probably a tune they'd learned that day at school. And now, Della went on, her voice filled with a tenderness that made Elliot look straight at her, they see you as that someone. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I see the way they look at you, Della said. How their faces light up when you arrive. How eager they are to show you new things, to impress you. I've never seen June care so much about someone's approval. I've never seen Maisie trust so quickly. And Nora, she shook her head, amazed. Nora, who barely spoke to strangers, now barely leaves your lap. Elliot tried to speak, but words felt inadequate. His eyes stung with unshed tears. I'm not saying this to pressure you, Della clarified quickly. I know you have your life, your responsibilities. I just thought you should know. They love you, Elliot, in a way they've never loved anyone besides me and their mother. And kids like them, who've lost so much, don't give that love easily. Elliot drew a shaky breath, trying to keep emotion at bay. I love them too, Della, he finally managed to say, more than I ever imagined I could love anyone. Della smiled, satisfied. I know. I can see it in your eyes. Just then the back door opened, and the 3 girls came out, now dressed in everyday clothes but still wearing their star necklaces. Uncle Elliot, come see our homework for tomorrow, June called excitedly. It's about families, Maisie added. We have to draw who lives in our house. Can we put you in the drawing? Nora asked timidly. Elliot glanced at Della, who gave him a nearly imperceptible nod. Then he turned to the girls with a smile. Of course you can, he answered, his voice steady despite the emotion. I'd be honored to be in your family drawing. The 3 beamed and ran back inside, discussing how they'd make the picture and which colors they'd use. Elliot and Della lingered in the yard a bit longer, watching the sky grow darker and reveal the first stars. Thank you for trusting me with their story. With your story, Elliot finally said. Thank you for giving us a future, Della replied simply. When they went back inside, Elliot knew something fundamental had changed within him, or perhaps it had merely been recognized, named. That feeling that had been growing ever since 3 little girls crashed his wedding and saved more than his fortune. He watched them leaning over the kitchen table, drawing with focus, their star necklaces shining under the modest light. He felt the weight of responsibility that came with being the one who stays. He accepted it, his heart full and without hesitation. Saturday dawned perfect. Blue skies, bright sun, a gentle breeze promising a pleasant day. Elliot had planned everything carefully throughout the week. He'd researched the best amusement park in the area, checked the hours, noted which rides were suitable for the girls' ages, and checked the weather forecast multiple times. When he stopped his car in front of the small blue house, he found the 3 already waiting on the porch, dressed in the clothes he'd brought especially for the outing, colorful shorts, printed t-shirts, and new sneakers for comfortable walking. Good morning, my stars, he greeted, stepping out of the car. Ready for an adventure, they ran toward him, their star necklaces bouncing on their chests. None had ever visited an amusement park. For Elliot, who grew up going to such places, it was hard to imagine a childhood without those memories. Today, he would help create some for them. "What's a real Ferris wheel like?" June asked, ever curious, as she settled into the back seat. "It's like touching the sky with your hands," Elliot replied, helping Nora with her seatbelt. "You'll love it." Della appeared in the doorway, holding a small bag. "I packed water, some snacks and hats so they don't get too much sun," she said, handing the bag to Elliot. "Thank you, Della. Why don't you come with us?" She smiled, shaking her head. "These old legs wouldn't keep up. Have fun. Just bring my girls back before dark." "I promise," Elliot said solemnly. The 40-minute drive to the park was filled with children's songs Elliot had learned just for occasions like this, plus non-stop questions from the girls. Was the park big? Were there lots of rides? Could they eat cotton candy? When they finally arrived, the three gaped at the huge, colorful gate bearing the name Wonderland in bright letters. Cheery music drifted from inside, along with laughter and excited shrieks. "It's huge!" Maisie exclaimed, holding Elliot's hand tight as they headed for the entrance. At the ticket booth, Elliot purchased the VIP package, giving them access to all rides and snacks throughout the day. The attendant gave each of them brightly colored wristbands. "These wristbands are magic," Elliot explained, helping Nora put hers on. "They show you can go on any ride you want." "Any ride at all?" June asked, eyes shining with excitement. "As long as you're tall enough," Elliot clarified. "Some are for bigger kids." The first attraction to catch their attention was the classic carousel, featuring horses and other animals bobbing up and down to a traditional tune. Elliot helped each choose their mount. June picked a white unicorn, Maisie a red horse, and Nora, always more cautious, chose a carriage that didn't move as much. "Look at me!" Maisie shouted as her horse rose, throwing her arms in the air in pure freedom. Elliot stayed beside Nora's carriage. She clutched the sides at first, but gradually relaxed and even smiled when she realized she was safe. After the carousel, they tried the bumper cars. June proved surprisingly adept, chasing Elliot around the ring while laughing every time she bumped into him. "You drive so badly, Uncle Elliot," she teased, making everyone laugh. The morning flew by with gentle rides and a few water attractions that left them slightly soaked but happy under the warm sun. For lunch, Elliot took them to the park's themed restaurant, where the sandwiches were served on plates shaped like cartoon characters. "I've never had a sandwich this good," declared Maisie, biting into her burger like it was the most precious thing in the world. After lunch, Elliot suggested a break. He led them to a quieter area of the park, where benches stood under leafy trees. "We need to save some energy for the rest of the day," he said. "There's still a lot to see." While they rested, a park photographer approached, offering to take a group photo. Elliot accepted gladly. "Say Wonderland," the photographer prompted. "Wonderland," the girls shouted in unison, their faces lit by sheer joy. The photo was printed on special paper with a colorful park frame and the date at the bottom. Elliot bought 3 copies, one for each girl to keep. "I'll hang it on my bedroom wall," June said, admiring the picture of the 4 of them with wide smiles and bright eyes. When they were re-energized, Elliot asked what they wanted next. "Cotton candy," Maisie answered immediately. At a bright booth, a skilled vendor turned ordinary sugar into large pink and blue clouds. The girls watched in fascination as he spun the paper cones, creating puffy shapes bigger than their heads. "It's like eating a cloud," Nora exclaimed after the first bite, possibly the longest sentence Elliot had ever heard her say in public. With their faces slightly sticky from sugar and smiles that seemed too big for their little faces, they continued exploring the park. They rode the kiddie roller coaster, eliciting half screams of fear, half squeals of delight from Maisie. They visited the funhouse mirrors and laughed non-stop at their distorted reflections. "Look, Uncle Elliot, you look so fat in this one." June giggled at a mirror that widened their images. "And you look stretched like spaghetti in that one," he countered, making her laugh even harder. As the afternoon wore on, Elliot realized they had saved the best for last, almost by accident: the Ferris wheel standing majestically at the park's center. its colorful gondolas turning slowly against a sky tinged with orange as the sun began to set. "It's time," he announced, pointing to the big ride. "Shall we touch the sky?" June and Maisie dashed to get in line, but Nora hesitated, gripping Elliot's hand. "Are you scared, sweetheart?" he asked gently, bending down to her level. She nodded, glancing up at the giant wheel. "You know," Elliot said softly, "sometimes the things that scare us a little are the ones that end up giving us the best memories, but you don't have to ride if you don't want to. We can wait here for June and Maisie." Nora looked at her sisters, already excited in line, then at the huge wheel slowly turning and finally back at Elliot. "Will you hold my hand at the top?" she whispered. "The whole time," he promised. "Then I'll go," decided the small girl, showing a courage that filled Elliot with pride. They finally boarded the Ferris wheel together, 4 of them in a cushioned gondola. The anticipation was palpable. As the gondola ascended, the park and city stretched out below, the view widening with each passing second. "Look, you can see our school from here," June exclaimed at the highest point, pointing in Riverside's direction. "And that shiny building must be where you work, Uncle Elliot," Maisie added, indicating the financial district. Nora said nothing, but her wide eyes betrayed amazement, and her small hand no longer squeezed Elliot's so tightly. Her initial fear had given way to enchantment. They rode 3 full turns on the Ferris wheel. On the last rotation, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, Elliot took more photos, the girls with windblown hair and glowing smiles, their eyes reflecting not just the sky, but a pure, unguarded happiness. By the time they stepped off, it was nearly time to head home. But Elliot had one last surprise. "How about we bring souvenirs for Grandma Della?" At the gift shop, he helped each pick out something for their grandmother, a keychain of the tiny Ferris wheel chosen by June, a bright park-themed mug picked by Maisie, and a small music box that played the carousel tune selected by Nora. For themselves, Elliot bought little stuffed bears dressed as park characters, each wearing a t-shirt in the girls' favorite color. The walk to the parking lot was slower than before. Their legs were tired, their hearts full, and their minds brimming with images and sensations. Nora was already dozing off in Elliot's arms as he carried her carefully. While he stowed the souvenirs in the trunk and helped the other 2 settle in the back seat, Maisie looked at him with eyes that still sparkled despite her fatigue. "Uncle Elliot," she said quietly. "Yes, Maisie. This is the happiest day of my life." Elliot felt that familiar rush of emotion in his chest again, the kind only these 3 could evoke. He smiled, leaning in to fasten the small one's seatbelt. "And we have plenty more beautiful days ahead," he replied, kissing her forehead. On the drive home, the 3 of them fell asleep quickly, worn out but content. Elliot drove slowly, occasionally checking the rearview mirror to see their sleeping faces. He thought about how, just a few months ago, his life had been about business, meetings, and a fiancée who only wanted his money. Now, his rearview mirror showed the true treasure, 3 little stars who had entered his life by chance and changed everything. 3 lives now entwined with his, not by documents or obligations, but by shared cotton candy, by hands held on a Ferris wheel, by promises of many wonderful days yet to come. When they finally arrived back at the small blue house, where Della waited on the porch, Elliot knew the day at the amusement park would be more than a fleeting memory. It would be a foundational one, the kind you revisit during tough times, that you tell and retell until it becomes part of your identity. A living memory, built not with pricey tickets or extravagant rides, but with something far more precious and immeasurable: presence, time spent together. Moments when the whole world was just 4 people in a Ferris wheel gondola, touching the sky with their fingertips and their hearts. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Autumn arrived, painting the trees of Riverside with gold and red hues. The nights grew longer, the mornings cooler. Dry leaves piled up in the small yard of the blue house, forming natural carpets the girls loved to stomp on, just to hear the crunchy sound beneath their feet. New Beginnings School thrived. The initial 150 slots soon proved insufficient, and an expansion was already in progress. Children who had never set foot in a classroom now ran through its hallways, played in the courtyard, and discovered the world through the books in the library. The teachers, carefully selected by Elliot, reported impressive progress in students who just months ago hadn't known how to hold a pencil. But no progress mattered more to Elliot than that of his 3 stars. June, now almost 8, could already read short books on her own and had developed a passion for science that amazed her teachers. Maisie, 6, showed a remarkable gift for math, adding and subtracting numbers with natural ease. And Nora, who had just turned 5, remained quiet in speech, but expressed herself more and more through drawings that were surprisingly complex for her age. Elliot's routine had been turned upside down. Although he still managed his business responsibilities, he arranged his schedule around the girls. Lunches at the small blue house became sacred, as did his evening visits to help with homework and read bedtime stories. Weekends were devoted to outings, picnics, and small adventures that yielded priceless memories. One fall evening, Elliot arrived later than usual. An important meeting had run long, and it was nearly 8 o'clock when his car pulled up outside the blue house. To his surprise, the girls were still awake, waiting on the porch despite the late hour. "Uncle Elliot!" they shouted in unison when he stepped out of the car. "My stars," he said with a smile, bending down to receive the triple hug that had become a ritual. "Shouldn't you be in bed by now?" "Grandma let us wait," June explained. "We have something really important to tell you." "Really, really important," Maisie emphasized, jumping up and down. "It's a good secret," Nora added softly. Della appeared at the door, drying her hands on her apron. "Good evening, Elliot. Sorry for keeping them up, but they insisted they had to show you something tonight. Now I'm intrigued," he replied, entering the welcoming little house that had seen a few subtle improvements over the months. A new sofa that had accidentally appeared one day, a more modern fridge replacing the old one when it broke, fresh curtains found on sale. "It's not inside," June said, tugging on his hand. "It's out back in the yard." "In the yard, but it's dark," Elliot noted. "That's the point," Maisie said mysteriously. Piqued, Elliot let them guide him down the narrow hallway to the back door. The small backyard looked different. Someone, likely Della and the girls, had swept the dried leaves, leaving a cleared space in the center. A picnic blanket was spread on the grass, and colorful cushions invited them to sit. "Come on, sit here," June directed, pointing to the center of the blanket. Elliot complied, settling among the pillows. The girls sat in front of him in a half-circle. They radiated a special energy, a contained excitement making him even more curious. "Now look up," Maisie instructed. Elliot lifted his gaze to the night sky. Without the city lights, the stars shone with impressive intensity. A crescent moon hung among scattered clouds, casting a gentle glow across the little yard. "It's beautiful," he said. "The stars are shining for us," Nora said, her small voice clear in the stillness. "And there are so many," Maisie added. "Over 1 million twice," the teacher said. "Actually, there are billions of stars in our galaxy," June corrected, ever precise, "but we can only see a few thousand with the naked eye." Elliot smiled, proud of how they soaked up knowledge like sponges. "And speaking of teachers," June said, abruptly changing the subject, "we have some news from school." "I'm eager to hear it," Elliot replied, genuinely interested. The 3 exchanged looks, as if deciding silently who would speak first. June, as usual, took the lead. "We learned to write our names today," she announced proudly. "Our full names, including our middle and last names. June Elaine Carter," she recited, tracing each letter in the air with her finger. "The teacher said my handwriting's getting prettier every day." "Maisie Rose Carter," added the middle one, mimicking her sister's gesture. "And I didn't forget any letters." "Nora Grace Carter," completed the youngest, her voice small but filled with pride. "That's wonderful," Elliot praised. "Writing your full name is a really important step." "The teacher says we're doing great," Maisie continued, unable to hide her excitement. "She's never seen kids learn so fast." "I can already read a whole book by myself," June said. "That one about the girl who finds a secret garden, remember? I've read it 3 times. And I can count to 100 without missing a single number," Maisie chimed in. I drew our family, Nora spoke up, gaining confidence as she talked. The teacher hung it on the classroom wall. Everyone liked it. Our family, Elliot repeated, feeling a warmth spread in his chest. Yes, I drew Grandma, June, Maisie, me, and you, Nora said, her eyes shining in the moonlight. Elliot swallowed hard, the emotion growing inside him. We love going to school, June declared, returning to the main point. It's the best place in the world after our house, and your car, Maisie added, making them all laugh. For a few moments, they fell silent, gazing at the starry sky. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves at the back of the yard, creating a soothing whisper. In the distance, faint music played, possibly from a neighbor's home. You know, Uncle Elliot, June began again, her voice more serious this time, we were talking before you got here. About what? He asked, noticing her tone shift. About how life was before you showed up, she explained. We tried to remember what it was like not going to school, not having books to read, not knowing how to write our names. It was different, Maisie said, shaking her head. It wasn't bad because we had Grandma, but it was less colorful, Nora added, surprising everyone with her perfect analogy. Again, the three exchanged glances, coming to some sort of silent agreement. Then June spoke, her small voice firm in the cool night. You changed our life. Elliot felt those simple words hit him like lightning. The sincerity in their eyes, the pure gratitude in their voices, the way their small bodies leaned toward him, full of trust. Something broke within him. All the walls he had built up over years of cold business deals and superficial relationships, all the reservations, all the fears. Without thinking, Elliot slid off the cushions and knelt before them, looking them in the eye. No, he said, his voice thick with contained emotion. You changed mine. The girls stared, wide-eyed at his reaction. Before you, I had money, a company, and a mansion. But I didn't have a home or real purpose. I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life, marrying someone who didn't love me. Elliot took a deep breath, trying to steady the emotion threatening to spill out. You saved me, not just from Cassandra's scheme, but from an empty life with no real meaning. You taught me what courage is, barging into that wedding without thinking of yourselves. You taught me what true gratitude is, saying you were only returning the favor after I sent food. You taught me what real love is, accepting me into your family without asking for a thing in return. A single tear escaped, rolling slowly down Elliot's cheek. He didn't bother wiping it away. For months, I've been thinking about what I really want for my life, about what truly matters. He paused, gathering courage for what he was about to say next. And I realized something I might have known for a while, but never dared to admit, not even to myself. He looked at each girl in turn. June, with her brilliant mind and natural leadership. Maisie, with her contagious joy and bottomless curiosity. Nora, with her gentle artistry and watchful silence. I think of you as my daughters, he finally said, the words coming straight from his heart. Not by blood, not on paper, but by something much stronger, by choice, by love. I'll always be there for you, whatever you need. You mean more to me than anything else in the world. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant music. The three girls gazed at him, tears shimmering in their eyes, their young minds absorbing the profound meaning of his words. Nora, the timid one, the youngest, moved first. She approached him and put her small arms around his neck. Maisie came next, hugging him tightly around his waist, surprisingly strong for her size. June paused, as if she needed to confirm this was real and not another adult making empty promises. But when she finally moved, she clung to Elliot with years' worth of longing, hoping for someone to stay. All three hugged him at once, and in that moment, under the autumn stars, something came full circle. A circle that began months ago, when three little girls crashed a wedding to save a stranger, was now complete. From the porch, Della watched silently, not wanting to interrupt the sacred moment. Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks, tears not of sadness but of deep relief, gratitude, and renewed hope. For years, ever since her daughter's death, she had carried a secret fear. What would happen to her granddaughters when she was gone? Who would protect them? Who would love them the way they deserved? Who would ensure they had opportunities in life? Now, watching this man kneeling with her 3 precious ones wrapped in his arms, Della knew her prayers had been answered in ways she never could have imagined. The circle was complete. The family reformed. Elliot felt the threefold embrace with every fiber of his being. He caught the scent of their children's shampoo, the warmth of their tiny bodies, and their absolute trust in how they clung to him. "Does this mean you're our dad now?" Maisie asked, her voice muffled against Elliot's shoulder. "If that's what you want, yes," he replied, his voice still shaky. "Voice, in my heart, I already am." "I always wanted a dad," Nora confessed so softly he almost missed it. "I always wanted daughters," Elliot answered, kissing the top of her head. June, ever practical, pulled back slightly to meet Elliot's gaze. "Does that mean you'll live here with us?" "It's small, but I think we can fit one more." Elliot laughed, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. "We can talk about that. Maybe we'll need a slightly bigger place for all of us." "With my own room?" Maisie asked, eyes gleaming. "With a room for each of you," Elliot confirmed. "But for now, let's just enjoy this moment, this night. Tomorrow we can sort out the details." The 4 people in the small yard turned their eyes back to the sky. The stars seemed brighter, as though celebrating with them. The star pendants around the girls' necks glinted in the moonlight, tiny points of shimmer. Della finally stepped off the porch and joined them, sitting on the edge of the blanket. Without words, she held out her hand to Elliot, and he took it gratefully. No one needed to speak. Both understood what had just happened, the complete transformation of their lives in such a short time. For a few more hours, they stayed there. 5 people the universe had unexpectedly brought together, now a family under the starry sky. They told stories, laughed, and made plans for the future. And when the girls finally began to yawn, Elliot carried each of them inside to bed as he'd done for months. But this time, as he kissed each forehead and tucked each blanket, there was something different. A deeper bond, an absolute certainty, a silent promise echoing in every gentle action. Leaving the girls' room, Elliot found Della waiting in the narrow hallway. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice filled with emotion. "No," Elliot replied, embracing the older woman who had become like a second mother to him. "Thank you for raising them, for keeping them safe until I could find them." When he finally left the little blue house that night, Elliot paused to look at the sky one last time. The stars still shone brightly, silent witnesses to an everyday miracle, the birth of a family, not by blood but by heart. And for one magical moment, Elliot felt as if all those stars were shining just for them, for the man who found a purpose, for the grandmother whose prayers were answered, and for 3 little girls who finally had someone who would stay forever. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.